Well, hello and welcome to Gospel Conversations. This is Pastor Doug Dunbar at Gospel Chapel in Grand Forks, British Columbia. As a church family at Gospel Chapel, we are committed to helping people follow Jesus. And one of the ways we live out our mission is by partnering with people and organizations around the world who have the same mission. And Wycliffe Bible Translators is a well-known organization that has many workers around the world. Well, here's just a bit of history of Wycliffe Bible Translators, and this is from their website. You can go and check them out, wycliffe.ca. Wycliffe started in Guatemala. In 1917, a young American named William Cameron Townsend arrived in the Central American country to distribute Spanish Bibles among the people there, but he quickly discovered most of them did not speak or understand Spanish. They had different languages, nor did they have a written form of their own language. So Townsend abandoned his attempts to sell Spanish Bibles and began living with the people. He learned their complex language, created an alphabet for it, analyzed the grammar, and translated the New Testament in a remarkably short span of 10 years. Over time, Townsend concluded that every man, woman, and child should have access to God's Word in their native language. But he had no idea there were more than 7,300 languages used around the world. But that knowledge wouldn't have deterred Cameron Townsend at all. With other like-minded colleagues, he founded Camp Wycliffe in 1934 as a linguistics training school. And he borrowed the name Wycliffe from the pre-Reformation hero John Wycliffe, who first translated the Bible into English. In 1942, Camp Wycliffe expanded to form two organizations, Wycliffe Bible Translators and the Summer Institute of Linguistics, now SIL International. The subsequent need for support services later led to the founding of JAARS. And I went to their website to find out what that stands for, and I couldn't find it at all. But basically what that organization is they provide computer, transportation, networking, all sorts of technical behind-the-scenes support services so that Bible translation can happen. Today, SIL and Wycliffe partner with national Bible translation organizations such as church denominations worldwide to translate God's Word, to promote literacy and encourage the use of translated Scripture. And while tremendous progress has been made, it is estimated that 167 million people speaking around 2,000 languages still need Scripture in their language to serve them best. Well, the vision of Wycliffe is a world where translated scriptures lead to transformed lives among people of all languages. Their mission is ending Bible poverty by facilitating the translation of God's Word among minority language communities worldwide. Gospel Chapel has supported Laird and Val Salkeld, who work with Wycliffe Bible Translators. They currently live in Calgary, Alberta, and Val is active in the pastoral care of workers in Wycliffe. And today on Gospel Conversations, we're going to get to know Laird and Val a bit and find out about their ministry and their life and how God is at work. But first, let's just get to know Laird and Val a bit, hear their story of how they're following Jesus, how God led them into this ministry, and where they are serving today. So here is my conversation with Val Salkeld. Well, awesome. It's great to be here with Laird and Val Salkeld today. And I've already kind of recorded the introduction so they know a bit about Wycliffe and what Wycliffe is all about. The one thing I did have a question about is that there was an indication that there was another organization that's connected with Wycliffe called JAARS.
Oh, JARS.
Yeah. So I went to their website because I'm like, what does that stand for? It looks like an acronym. But I couldn't find any information on what that stands for, other than it's just they provide all the technical support.
Yeah, it used to stand for Jungle Audio and Jungle something Audio Aviation Radio Services back in the day.
Oh, okay.
But that became less relevant
Right.
when the technology, of course, changed decades ago now. And then Jungle as well was didn't apply either. So
right.
they've long since dumped it. Now they just go with
JARS.
JARS. Okay. And it's just overall technical support whatever.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff, and still do. And based out of I think they're at the North Carolina Wycliffe / Jars US place there. So they're alive and well and doing all sorts of stuff.
All right. Well, great. We're going to get to know you, just kind of get to know your story, a little bit of your history. I'm kind of coming in with the assumption, one, I don't know you all that well. I've only been here for 4 years, and we've never actually got to connect when you have been in Grand Forks. And also we have a number of people in our church that are new that might not know you either. And so, first of all, let's just start. How did you get connected with Gospel Chapel? What's the history of your connection here?
My history is greater than Valerie's. So my parents retired to Grand Forks in 1976. Okay. I was 10, and we attended the Gospel Chapel. And then, Pines Camp was part of that for me to some degree. And and then Dad passed in 96 and Mom passed in 2015, but they both attended right up. Mom was attending right till to her last days in 2015, and just buckets and buckets of connections, and coming up on 20 years with Wycliffe, and Gospel Chapel has been a part of that. We're grateful for that as well, and still lots of family and friends in the valley and the lake, and so that's
and I got
my
connected.
childhood church.
Yeah, and I got connected through Laird when we were starting to date in the 80s.
Okay.
So,
we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
So where were you both born, and where did you grow up? Or early family life?
I was born in New West, and my parents were in Burnaby. So that move in '76 was from Burnaby, New West coast area to Grand Forks.
Okay, awesome.
So I sort of grew up half New West Burnaby and sort of half Grand Forks by the time I completed high school and moved to Alberta.
Okay, awesome.
And I was born in Calgary, but moved and grew up in Salmon Arm, BC. Okay. So sort of in the area as well, and loved that. And then we were moved to Lethbridge when I was in my late teens. So been there for that was my growing up time. Really enjoyed BC, Salmon Arm, and my connection there. Still have connection with people there as well.
Good. So how did you two meet then? How did you and Laird meet, Val? Who wants to tell the story, and let's see if they line up?
I'll tell the real story. I was working in Calgary in the 80s and working at a camera store, and Laird was going to Alberta College of Art and Design at that time, and so he was taking a photography class and needed all kinds of equipment and developing stuff and paper and film and everything else. And so he would come into the store and see me, and that's to see me. But he needed the equipment and the photography stuff. And so we that's how we met. Okay. And I was new to Calgary at the time, and he was wearing a little fish pin. And so I was looking to find a church in Calgary. It's a big place. And so I wasn't sure where to go to church. And so when I asked him about his fish pin, whether it was just kind of decorative or if he knew what it meant, he did know what it meant. And so I started attending the same church as Laird.
Right. Well, there you go. Here's the Gospel Chapel fish pin.
There you go.
There it is. That's the one.
Excellent. So how long have you guys been married then? Or actually, Laird, what's your side of that story?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I was in the first year at ACAD in Calgary and taking a photography course. Of course, this was all pre-digital.
Right.
So I just bought a camera, an old SLR, and was needing supplies on a regular basis for this class in first year.
Right.
And strolled into the shop and saw her regularly, and then asked her out, and then dated for that time I was at ACAD, and then proposed last semester, like January of 90, and then married in 1990. So it'll be 32 years this July 14th.
All right.
Hanging out. So
awesome. And you have kids, family?
Yeah, Chloe is the youngest. She's 20. She's
this one.
She's
Yep.
The pictures are right here. Yeah.
They're awesome.
She's still at home here. She's at SAIT. And then Emily, she just moved to Victoria, so she's working at the hospital there. And then Clayton is married 3 years this August. And he's just about to leave for another season of wildfire in Cypress Hills.
Oh, okay.
And his wife is at University for Psychology.
Awesome.
He's 26.
Okay.
And Emily's 24 and Chloe is 20. Yeah, that's the kid thing. Good kids. They still like to hang out with us. So I'll take that as a win.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, no, that's a good thing. Awesome. Let's talk about your journey of faith a little bit. When did you come to faith in Jesus? And what was that? What was the process for you? What led up to that moment in your life?
Well, I grew up in a Christian home, and so it's sort of undefined for me. I don't remember ever not being a Christian, although I do remember being at camp. And when I was probably about 12 and thinking, oh, so this isn't a family thing, this is a personal thing. And making a decision at camp that this was something that I wanted for myself as well as, how that was separated from my parents. I didn't know, but I did make that decision, was baptized about a year later. And so it's a beautiful journey. Mm-hmm. I mean, it because I come from it, it feels very holistic, and it feels supportive, and it just feels like not that it hasn't ever been challenged. It's grown. Mm-hmm. But that's what sort of was my starting point, was that it just was always right, and it was always good, and it was always meant to be a personal relationship with God, and that He desired to know us and want to be connected. Right. So that was sort of my moment, I guess, when I decided that at camp. Yeah, cool. Camp is a good place to meet Jesus.
Yeah, for sure. As back when I was growing up, we came to the Pines during the summers as well. So lots of good memories and key decision moments for me were actually right here at Pines Bible Camp. So camp's a great time. Yeah, Laird, how about yourself?
Similar to Valerie. I'm born and raised in a Christian home, and always going to church and Sunday school, and always knowing the Christian story. And of course, Gospel Chapel as a kid was a big part of that, and Boys Brigade, and some key individuals there, Rick Friesen and Tim Martins, and
Actually, both of those are my uncles.
I thought so. Oh. And then a little bit of Pines in there. Yeah. Strayed during my teenage years, but again, a couple more key relationships: Bruce Jepson and Tim Pauls, who did not stray. So when I found myself alone in Calgary about a year before I met Valerie, I returned, came back to God, and said, last several years, I haven't seemed to done anything well with them. So why don't you take this life, God? And then things just took off. The whole my education and meeting Valerie and marriage and moving and work, and then returning to the church, of course, at that time, and then years subsequent, and Wycliffe, and it's just been a crazy, cool, wild ride since. So yeah, no regrets. I remember my 19th birthday in a park alone in Calgary, and finished my last pack of cigarettes and said, "All right, God, you're on. Go for it." And haven't looked back. So it's been good.
That's awesome. That's great to hear your journey, your story with that. When did you sense God calling you to full-time ministry? And what was that journey like? Because you were going to school for photography, Val, you were working, and you're married now. And there's this kind of push. So something led you into pursuing full-time ministry. What was that?
Yeah, I was in school for graphic design, and having returned to the faith just a year before, and really sort of viewing this direction and guidance from God with regards to design and so forth. I was really grateful for that. So I was very conscious during my entire years at design school that I wanted to do graphic design wherever God wanted me to do it. And my mother was familiar with Word Life magazine, which was a publication of Wycliffe Canada in Calgary, and I was in Calgary. So I met Wycliffe folk and showed them my portfolio a year or two before I even graduated. Okay. And a key relationship there with Dwayne Janke, who was the editor of the magazine, proved to be, the beginning of a very slow, gentle recruitment process. Mm-hmm. And so we married, moved to Edmonton, and then moved back to Calgary and moved to Rosebud. I worked in a couple of different places. Valerie worked we moved to Edmonton for Valerie's sign language interpreter. So she was working as a sign language interpreter, again, while we moved to Edmonton and Calgary and Rosebud and back to Edmonton. And then, I had done some freelance stuff for Wycliffe while I was doing other graphic design stuff, taught for a while in Edmonton, and then just figured, well, I should just triple check to see if this Wycliffe thing is supposed to happen or not. We've been sort of nibbling around the edges for the longest time. And then, sure enough, it did. We went through the whole process in 2000, 2001, and then joined. And I could see God throughout that whole process, and then moved to Calgary from Edmonton in 2002 to join Wycliffe full-time. And of course, the irony now is that my role has changed and in recent years, and Valerie's has exploded. And again, the irony there is that when we moved in 2002, she was sort of reluctant. She was quite content in Edmonton, nice house, nice neighborhood. I could walk to work, walk Clayton to kindergarten, and everything was fine. And then or God, I will say, sort of mixed things up. And so we ended up coming to Calgary. But Valerie is quite openly tells a different experience.
So I'll go next. I never wanted to be in full-time ministry. And I knew, even when we were dating, that the gratitude that he felt for just being able to get the education that he had and the work that he was doing, that he wanted to use it for God in some capacity. And he had talked about ministry, and I was thinking, well, that'll change. And so when he said, well, we kind of nibbled around the edges about, applying for Wycliffe, I was always digging in my heels and saying, no, I don't feel like I'm called to ministry. And the application process with Wycliffe is quite extensive. Right. There were home visits, there were interviews, there were all kinds of different things. It was an extensive process. And so the last part of it was what they called a Wycliffe orientation course. Okay. And it was a 2-week process. And we met people that were working on the field at the home office. And basically it was a time to get to know who Wycliffe is and what they do. And at this point, Clayton and Emily were, 3 and 4 or something. And I was pregnant with Chloe. And I agreed to go to this Wycliffe orientation course, thinking in my head, we're going to go and finally Laird will hear from God that we are not supposed to be missionaries. And of course, that is not what happened. But God, he was very clearly speaking to me at that time, just saying, because I was looking for something really clear. I was looking for, the big talking donkey stopping you in the middle of the road, and just a real voice saying, this is the direction. But what I heard instead was just God saying, I am asking you to be obedient. And for now, that means Wycliffe. And so that was when I knew that Wycliffe was on the horizon.
Right.
And I didn't know how long that would be. Wycliffe is this organization that has a lot of longtime members. They're lifers. They have lots of people who join and stay for 40, 50 years. That's not uncommon.
Right.
Even now. And so, but I couldn't fathom that. And so to think that we are now with Wycliffe for 20 years is pretty amazing to me. And God is good. He has really brought me along. Yes.
Well, and your role is maybe a little different than what a lot of people, I think, would picture when you say, oh, I'm with Wycliffe Bible Translators. They kind of picture you're out in the bush somewhere with a bunch of people and you're trying to figure out their language and translate the Bible but there is that's kind of the end product or the goal, but there is so much more to Wycliffe, because for that to happen, there's a lot of other support things that come that have to come around that, right? And then there's, just communication, and there's literacy and language training, and there's so many layers to it that it's not just people out in the bush trying to write out the New Testament in a new language. So what is your role now? There was graphic design with Laird, and but you said some of these roles have changed over the last number of years. So can you just kind of talk a little bit about that and what your role in Wycliffe is?
Sure. Yeah. So my relationship with Wycliffe changed a few years ago for a couple of reasons. I went from being a member to essentially being a contractor. Wycliffe's communications was going through a big rethink with lots of changes, and I didn't fit in the same way. And then, frankly, financially, it just wasn't viable. We couldn't. The whole 2-for-1 thing just wasn't viable. So I became a contractor. Okay. That contract has changed, and actually, it's less and less as of late, but still doing some stuff for them. And the latest news is that contract may change again for the better come the fall, but that's pretty early yet. So I probably shouldn't have said anything. So still doing graphic design on a small to medium contract basis. And find myself on site there once in a while, and still got a workstation for me. The guy that replaced me, that replaced the gal that replaced me, has been very generous and with space and work. So very grateful for that. Still a connection there. Still, frankly, in awe that Wycliffe does what they do. It is just just mind-boggling. And our next newsletter is going to have the annual stats for for the various projects that Wycliffe Canada was involved in this last year. So,
right.
Yeah, it's changed and lessened a bit, but still solid, and the future is a little bright as of late. So
awesome.
So that's my role.
Okay.
And so for my role, I started going into the office more part-time in about 2007. Up until that point, I was home with the kids and just taking care of that in that capacity. And so I started in prayer ministries, and there's been a couple of changes in executive directors over the years. And so one that came in about 2009, when we met and were chatting, he really wanted to meet all of the staff that he could for Wycliffe, which is a big ask because there's 450 of us. Right. And we're all over the world. And so he met as many of them on Canadian soil as he could. And so he was traveling all over the place trying to meet people and just find out more about what was important to people. Because before that, people were doing their jobs and they were doing a great thing. Like you had the translators that were working with the people trying to figure out their languages and all of those pieces of translation, but how did the support roles fit? And so he wanted to talk about prayer ministries and what does it mean for me and what does it mean for our staff? And he was really good at bringing people together and saying, we're not silos. You can't work over here and have it not affect the people that are over here. And so he was really good in saying, okay, now we need to talk. Everybody needs to work together. And so it's, if you want to call them silos, each of the departments were silos. He was good at breaking down the silos and bringing people together. And prayer ministries, he saw as a vital piece of that. And so it went from being just sending out newsletters of people's prayer requests to he actually invited me to sort of work with him and work all around with our staff. And so all of a sudden I was connecting with all of our staff. And so I went for direct training in spiritual direction in 2010 and 11. And that was really helpful to help me do my job well and be able to connect with people as they went through this shift too. All of a sudden now we're expected to work with all these other departments and how does that fit? And it would cause stress for some people. And so that it was a really good time. And then in 2000 we got another president and he has been moving forward in making things more, we'll get into that later. But for my role, now I work in prayer ministries, and there's sort of two parts to it. There's the spiritual enrichment side or the spiritual formation side. And then there's also the reaching out to churches and individuals and inviting them to be prayerfully involved with the work of Wycliffe and our the projects and the people that we have, the partners that we have all over the world, and not just the individual staff people. So, and I'm the spiritual formation side of it. So now I'm a chaplain.
Okay. And that's just thinking back a little bit, you said there's about 450 people in Wycliffe, but that's Wycliffe Canada, right? Is that? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's not the global Wycliffe International. I mean, that would be a much bigger number.
Yeah, Wycliffe US would be the largest Wycliffe organization. They're about 10 times the size.
Yeah.
And then there's Wycliffe Canada, and then Wycliffe UK, I think is around 200. Those would be the three largest. But there's
82. So Wycliffe Global Alliance would be the umbrella, and then there's 82, whether there's in Korea or Australia or India, or they're just Wycliffe all over the world.
Several Wycliffes in several countries.
It's a multinational missions agency. It's not like a North American, we're going to the world. It's the world everywhere with one task. Yeah.
And you mentioned JARS earlier. We were just talking about Wycliffe. The other organization or organizations, there's CanIL, which trains out of Langley. And then, of course, there's SIL, which is kind of like the, training and projects out of the U.S.
No, I've when I was at Acts Seminaries, I did my master's degree there, and there were a number of students in my Hebrew classes because I did an Old Testament specialization, but a number of students in my Hebrew classes were SIL students or CanIL students.
Cool.
Wow.
And we were prepping for overseas translation work. So. Yeah, actually, the majority of them were.
Most of the grads from CanIL end up joining Wycliffe and SIL and work overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, a lot of my master's thesis work, I relied a lot on SIL research in Hebrew linguistics. They impact a lot of ministries other than just Bible translation. It's Bible scholarship and across the world. Their
linguistic expertise is recognized across all governments and NGOs, and it's quite impressive. And CanIL, of course, as well.
Amazing. So currently you're Laird, you're on a contract basis, still doing graphic design stuff. Val's role is shifting a lot into kind of pastoral care chaplaincy. And so we just want to dive into some of the current ministry realities and what's going on in the day-to-day stuff right now. What are you seeing God doing in people's lives as you're kind of fulfilling this role and as this role has grown?
It has been such an amazing joy to work with our staff all over the world. It's been, when pre-COVID, I was meeting with people mainly in our office, which had about 45 people that would come to the office regularly.
Right.
But since COVID, I have been connecting with people all across Canada and some in different parts of the world. And so it has been a time where people are wanting to, like we're finding in churches too, is what is God doing? What is going on here? And so we have people all over the spectrum, whether they are angry, whether they are confused or frustrated or fearful. And so just wanting to talk about their contexts. And so meeting with people via Zoom like this has been amazing. And so people that I didn't know before, and what a joy that God is opening those doors to names of people that I always saw come across my desk because I'm praying for them.
Right.
But now I get to see their faces and pray for their ministry in a very different way, and pray for them and pray for their people that they work with. Right. But most recently, just on Saturday, we had what they call a scripture celebration, which they do every year. And so they celebrate the different translations that have been completed. And so whether that's New Testament, Old Testament, or the whole Bible.
Right.
And so we celebrated 17 new translations. And this is really exciting. It covered, 17 or 50 countries, because there's some people groups that are in different parts of the world. And so we heard stories about how in one part of the world, it's a sensitive area location, so I'm not exactly sure where it was, but he was telling us how they had completed this translation. But in order to get it published, it had to be brought to the local government office and so all of the government had to read the transcript. And so they read the Bible in their language.
Yeah.
And it's a Muslim nation. And it was just incredible how people were reading this and asking questions and just seeing a real difference in that's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of story that just inspires me.
So it was approved and it was printed, and they even got a local Muslim, well-known, famous voice actor to do the audio version of it.
Wow.
And he would take copies of it home and read it to his family, and had this great quote about how when he reads this New Testament, he burns inside.
Huh.
So just crazy stories, cross-cultural, cross-faiths of God getting this done, regardless of local context, national restrictions, even oppression. It's just, every year, just story after story after story all over the globe about, wow, God is unstoppable. And it's just... And people who would say they're opposed to God and opposed to, Christian faith, working with it.
Right.
And, just tingles, just blows me away.
Yeah. It's like, okay, you're against it, but have you ever read the story?
And then they're not opposed to reading the story, right? Especially Old Testament. They got no problems reading that at all.
Yeah. That's amazing. So what are some of the challenges you're facing currently in ministry?
In my ministry, I feel like there are just regular connection with people. I feel like that at the same time that things have really opened up, it's hard to have the regular flow in order to really connect well with people. And so whether that's in the Calgary office, one of the main roles that I have main pieces of my role is facilitating our weekly chapel time.
Okay.
And so as you may have noticed in your own services and online, it can go quite up and down.
Yep.
So so having some regular connection is a challenge, and people are tired. I recently read an article on pandemic flux and how we want to connect, and yet this isn't the connection we want, and so it's doing funny things to our bodies and our minds and our hearts, and so that's a challenge for me personally. Laird I want Laird to chat about a challenge that in translation that Prescience Labs, an innovative lab that Wycliffe has. I'm going to let him talk about that.
Okay.
Well, there's the historical ongoing challenge with translation projects is speed.
Yeah.
There's enough sort of logistical and technical and political and geopolitical delays that take the process longer than they would like it. But the biggest challenge there is software. So the latest thing is, technology is always developing, and the initial sort of, I guess what they would call first draft software technology has come a long ways. So Wycliffe is playing a role with that, creating a software development team to make improvements into the process of doing this now, of adapting and changing and developing this first draft translation software so that it can do an initial first draft translation much faster than previously. So that's significance. The big buzzword around Wycliffe Canada they call it Prescience Labs. They got a website. There's a bunch more information there.
Okay.
But that's the big challenge is doing that initial first draft rough translation as quicker and quicker and quicker, because again, the technology is allowing for it. And then the other challenges is that the remaining languages are rural, and other challenges there, of course, is that there is access. Those people groups in those places are less receptive to where Wycliffe is coming from faith-wise. So that's an ongoing challenge. And then the other challenge that comes with that religious climate and that rural is local translators. So one of the biggest challenges that Wycliffe has faced and has met, frankly, is having more and more locals on the translation team, because they really are the experts in the language. Well, that becomes a challenge when you're in countries that are less receptive to translation work, and specifically translation of the Bible. There's a lack of educated locals, frankly. And with that, there can be a lack of ownership. It's not the old model of Wycliffe blowing in there and doing this translation, then leaving, has long since been dispelled. And that was a challenge in and of itself that Wycliffe has been aware of for decades. So, in some respects, it's sort of same old when it comes to some politics and faith, as far as challenges are concerned. But it's also new and exciting with this, with the software developments.
I think that's one of the things I think a lot of people don't really maybe understand about the whole process. I think coming from a very Western educated society, is that you can't just translate it into a target language and give them a book and walk away because you didn't teach them how to read.
Or they didn't do the translation themselves, so there's a lack of ownership. That moves into the local church, if there is one, using the scriptures.
Yes.
If the people are educated and interested and receptive and get involved, then they're going to use it, and they're going to use it in the context of the church, even if the church officially isn't there yet. It's only a matter of time before it comes in some respects, especially if there's a translation of the project. It's sort of chicken and egg challenge there, I guess, as well.
And then just the long range, we've done this translation work. What's the long game after it? All sorts of accompanying materials, whether it's local secular government stuff, or whether it's children's education, literacy and development, or whether it is accompanying information for further education, again, whether it's Sunday school or adults, beyond high school and so forth.
And in many places, it is starting there. It is starting with the dictionary. It's starting with preschools and schools. The other part of that, of course, are sign languages. There's over 400 sign languages that are they are working on video.
Okay.
And there are parts of the world that have only oral storying. So how do you translate the Bible orally for them? So there's all kinds of different things that need to be considered.
The sign language thing is a real significant development in translation globally. And the challenge there, I guess, is that many deaf people in various cultures are marginalized compared to a deaf community in Vancouver or Calgary or even Grand Forks. Yeah. So there's a sort of a sub challenge in the context of that one specific genre of translation, if you will, the sign language.
Yeah, and I guess that would go for even. I mean, there's sign language, and then there's also Braille. Just kind of flip that into navigate that. Oh, very, very interesting. Yeah, lots of challenges. Of course, the last 2 years has been very challenging. I think we've touched on this already. But how has the last 2 years really had? You've had to change how you do things out of necessity, especially. And Val, you've already kind of touched on this. With being able to connect with all of the beyond the office, but how is are there any other things that you've seen that kind of has reshaped the approach to ministry for you?
I think the reshaping has been really good. In when I was mentioning that chapel is one of the largest parts of my role. And because we have staff across the country, they would hear we're doing chapel, and we get to hear all these stories during chapel. And other parts of Canada or the world were saying, how come we can't, be a part of that? Right. And so in January of 2020, we launched the very first virtual chapel.
Okay.
And then we had one in February, and we're just planning one for it. We were thinking, it'll be a monthly virtual chapel, which turned into, oh my goodness, God saw this coming and made it and set it up before we knew we needed it.
Right.
And so that reshaping has been really good because it has connected people that were isolated and then became also those who became isolated.
Yeah.
And so that reshaping has been very good. And I don't think we will go back to only in person.
Right.
I think that we have a lot of people that have been saying, please don't go back to only in person, and they want this hybrid thing. And so that part of it has reshaped what I do. But also it's reshaped staff meetings and how we connect with our partners on the field. And video conferencing has been a big part of the global context for a long time. But it's sort of reshaped how we're doing things in the office. But at the same time, now I'm not quite so inclined to go into the office because there's so few people there.
Right.
And so that's something we need to figure out too.
Yeah.
And I think that there are some people we're just waiting until the fall to see how things kind of land before they make the decision to come back into the office or not. So it's been a good thing, and it's been a challenging thing too.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, if we weren't socially awkward before COVID, we sure are now. Other than in this format, it's kind of like, we don't know what to, we're all, I think, on some level struggling to rethink how we engage relationally now.
But I love this too. This isn't something that we've been able to do with, or even thought to do with churches in the past.
Right. Yeah.
And this opportunity is just such a gift. And I have really appreciated that.
Yeah. No, as I've been doing these, and we've been connecting with some of our missionaries who are overseas, who are, when are we going to see them next? It might be 5 years. It might be, we don't know. I got back in January, got to connect with one of our missionaries who's in Ukraine before the invasion. And,
wow.
and we've been able to kind of keep in contact, but they're right in the thick of it right now. But it was, we're not going to get to connect. The missionary letters are great. The once every 2 to 5 years visits are awesome. But I'm sensing more of a disconnect, and our people don't connect as much anymore. So this format, I think, is really helping us to really reconnect with all the missionaries that we support.
Thank you for this. This is good, and thank you that you seem to be good at it.
Get on your talk. I think it's that hard.
So thanks for your interest, and thanks for your
yes.
I don't know, your interest. interest. So this has been good.
Yeah. Well, just as we get close to wrapping up here, what's God laying on your heart for this year, for 2022? What's He put on your heart? What's your divine imperative that keeps you focused and serving? And what are you anticipating?
I'm quite excited about what's coming up in my role because, as I mentioned, I've just finished this education piece, and so I'm looking at how we were talking about reshaping and how I can reshape some of the things that I have ahead of me, whether that is chapel, whether that's spiritual direction, whether that is connecting with people in the office and just being with people in a new way. I think one of your other missionaries was talking about the support that their staff needs, and I see that in so many conversations, and so that at sometimes I feel like I am with Jesus on that mountain, just wanting to pray over Jerusalem, over our people, over to just pray with them and for them. And so that really keeps me focused because people have been so open and generous with their spiritual lives that I feel like I'm holding their sacred story.
Right.
And so that is what I have ahead of me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I guess for me, the nature of contract work is that it changes. That's what we like about it, but that also has some trepidation.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if the contract is going to change in my case for the better come summer, come fall. So I'll be tracking on that and chatting with some folks there. And then I still do some freelance graphic design on the side, which is always a blast and always fun, and working from home. Yeah. And having just launched Emily, still sort of in home kid mode, launching Emily and praying for Clayton's safety come wildfire and Jory's future with her education. And Chloe's with us for another year, if not longer. So, I guess that one of the changes for me and that I'm excited about from year to year has been more home time, more kid time, more neighbor time, more serving in our local little church more. It's a fun, cool, exciting place that's growing and more and more diverse.
Yeah.
And so more and more involved there is what 22 is looking like for me on the graphic design church family front.
Right on. Well, we're gonna link the Wycliffe website here in the description below. Is there any other ways we can maybe connect, find out more about what you guys are doing? You have a newsletter that comes out. Is that just paper or digital now? And is there a way to subscribe to that, or if people want to just kind of be a little more connected, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the newsletter comes out 4 times a year. It's typically it's Yeah, 200 plus people get that via MailChimp. So they could email me that and I could add them to the list and they would get that 4 times a year. And then we can provide some other stuff, like a link to Preston's Labs. We can provide that as well. Because that's the latest, greatest on the Wycliffe Canada front.
Right.
And then what else? Those are the two. Valerie's certainly available for any speaking engagements. She did a women's prayer thing at the Pines a few years ago that I think was well received, and so forth. And I don't know. Does that answer your question? What else was there?
No, that's awesome. And I mean, you're not that far away, and so hopefully we'll see you in the near future.
Yeah. Yeah, we hope we're down there in July for sure because one of my nephews has put together a little family reunion.
Okay.
We're going to be up, all of us Salkelds are going to be up at the Pavan Ranch for July. Right. We're hoping to kick around before and or after that, so we'll be there in July.
Okay.
And then in the past, sometimes we've made it there for Thanksgiving. My brother's in-laws are very generous, the Henshaw, so we've been there. So we might be back there in October for a Henshaw Thanksgiving.
All
Deep
right.
fried turkey in the driveway.
Awesome. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you in person, and we'll talk about having you guys here on a Sunday, and maybe do something there too.
All right. Thank you. Cool.
But we'll talk about that later. How can we pray for you in this season that you're in right now?
Well, same old. We're certainly grateful for all the prayers and encouragement, and of course, finances that the Gospel Chapel have provided. Very generous, and thanks for sticking with us through all these crazy times and changes and so forth. Specific prayer requests, I guess, for me would be what this contract looks like or doesn't look like in the coming months.
Pray for our family. I mean, it's always, I don't know, I feel like it's always the mom saying, pray for the family. But yes, pray for our family, please. Right. And I always felt that was really meaningful. When people, being at the Gospel Chapel, people always ask about our kids. And that's so meaningful to us.
Yep.
And so thank you for that. And please keep going. They're young adults, and it's just, I think there's lots to sort through, and just, they are doing well. We're very proud and happy with where they're at in life. But I really feel that has because of the prayers of the people. So please continue to pray for them. And probably for me, it's very easy to become weary. Yeah. And so pray for restorative rest when I can get it. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today, and to it's been good to kind of get to know you a little bit, and hear your journey, and also just kind of what God's doing in your in and through your ministry, and great to get to know you. And we'll look forward to seeing you hopefully in July here, and so thank you so much for taking the time this morning to chat with me.
Thank you, Doug. This is good. And hi to everyone there. And hopefully see you in July.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that was great to talk with Val and Laird Salkeld today from Wycliffe Bible Translators. For more information on Wycliffe, head over to wycliffe.ca. That's the Wycliffe or Wycliffe, depends on how you want to pronounce that. Canada, the Canadian website. And right on that front page, as soon as you get there, you'll find some fascinating statistics. One of the things that really caught me when I looked at it was that there are about 7,400 languages spoken worldwide, But guess what percentage of those actually have the complete Bible translated into that language? 10%. So only about 740 languages out of 7,400 actually have the Bible translated. 37% have portions, but 54% have yet to even have a single verse translated. 54% of the languages spoken around the world do not even have a single verse translated into their heart language. And so that's amazing. This is one of the reasons we support Wycliffe Bible Translators, is that they are working so very hard in so many areas to increase literacy, increase quality of life through literacy and education, but most importantly, translating God's Word. And so take some time, go to wycliffe.ca. Or SIL.org. SIL.org is the Summer Institute of Linguistics. That's a much broader organization, but very, very key. SIL has a school on the Trinity Western campus, CanIL, or Canadian Institute of Linguistics, and they do great work there. I actually used their library and resources as I was working on my master's thesis, but just some great scholars and linguistics is there. And then the JAARS, the JARS, they have a website too. You can look that up. And these links I'll be posting in the description below. Well, thank you again for joining us for Gospel Conversations. Please give this video a like. If you have not subscribed, hit the icon right here in the bottom corner, and you can subscribe to the Gospel Chapel. Hit the bell to get notifications when we upload videos, and we will see you next time on Gospel Conversations.